Hey folks, Jordan with TYT Politics. Let me know if you could hear me. I was having audio problems yesterday. Let me know if you could hear me. I'm in East Chicago, Indiana right now. My third time. I'm covering the ongoing lead crisis here. I was on Facebook yesterday, updating you on that. We're going to be posting more videos on youtube.com/TYT Politics. But before I went out for the rest of the day to cover this story, I need to get something off my chest because I'm going to go fucking nuts. I am going to go fucking nuts if I don't get this off my chest because I have had it up to here with the hysteria over Russia and the complete ignoring of the real scandals and misery happening all over the country. All over the country is misery. All over the country is injustice. All over the country is formerly middle class people, minorities, white, black, Latino, getting screwed by corporations and big oil and the government. Not a mention of that on CNN, not a mention of that in the New York Times. But we need to go 24/7 about Russia. And bring it on, the trolls. I'm ready for you. So let me explain to you what needs to be done regarding Russia, and then what really is the scandals going on in this country, okay? Because it's two separate things. Let me explain it to you. Number one, Donald Trump obviously puffs up like a teddy bear when it comes to Russia. Russia either has something on Donald Trump, or Donald Trump genuinely wants to have a better relationship with Russia. Common sense? Russia has something on Trump. This isn't a controversial statement. Russia probably has something on Trump. My bet is Trump has a lot of financial ties to Russia. He doesn't want it revealed. Russia, Trump, Republicans are directly involved with big oil and trying to drill all over the world. So Trump doesn't want to release his taxes. Trump, it's been reported over and over that before he became president, his business had many dealings with Russia, and he doesn't want it revealed. That's the bottom line. That's probably what is the connection between Trump and Russia. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, Trump had a national security advisor named Michael Flynn and a former campaign manager named Paul Manafort. Okay, so Paul Manafort lobbied for Russia. That's a fact. And Michael Flynn was paid for speeches and other things by Russia. That's another fact. So reporting came out recently that Michael Flynn and Paul Manafort were in constant communication with Russia during the presidential campaign. So that's reporting. It's been reported by many people. Intelligence agencies intercepted these communications. Okay, so that's a fact. Terrific. I'm just establishing the facts. Now it's been revealed that Michael Flynn, during the transition period before Trump was officially president, before Michael Flynn was officially the national security advisor, had calls with the Russian ambassador to the United States. And on those calls, either explicitly or just vaguely alluding to it, Flynn basically told the Russian ambassador Don't worry about Obama expelling 35 Russian diplomats. Take a chill pill. When Trump comes in, we're going to reevaluate the sanctions. Essentially, that's what Flynn said. Okay. So we have the facts established, right? So if Flynn did that, it is wrong. You're not supposed to. If you are a private citizen, which at the time Flynn was, he was not the national security advisor. Donald Trump was not the president. He should not be declaring what government policy will be for a foreign country. Okay, so Michael Flynn said that. He seemed to allude that sanction relief might be coming under President Trump, and Michael Flynn has been fired. Why this is Watergate, I don't understand. I don't understand why this is the foreign equivalent of Watergate. The media, I have been in Standing Rock over the last week, and now I'm in East Chicago. Whenever I turn on the news, it's 24/7 about Michael Flynn, about, what did Trump know, and when did he know it? What did they know, and when did they know it? What more is going on behind the scenes? Okay, so bottom line, this is what needs to happen. It's very simple. The protest movements around the country are terrific. The protest movements on behalf of the refugee bans, the protest movement against Donald Trump's xenophobic Muslim bans and the wall and all these things. It's terrific. Protest movements for Standing Rock, wonderful. Bottom line is, not just for Russia, but for a whole lot of things, there needs to be a large protest movement to get Donald Trump to release his taxes. That's the bottom line. This whole Russia thing will come to a head once we know what is in his taxes, what are his investments, and what are his business dealings. Okay? So that needs to happen. Donald Trump needs to release his taxes. It's very simple. I'm not fear-mongering. He just needs to release his taxes. And public sentiment and journalists need to apply pressure for that to happen. But what is insane to me, completely insane. Oh, number two, what needs to happen? There does need to be an independent investigation into communications between Donald Trump's campaign and Russian officials during the campaign, for the only reason to see, did any of these communications include coordination on anything? So if Donald Trump's senior campaign officials were constantly contacting the Russian government officials and coordinating on anything, whether it was releasing stolen email, whatever it is, then that needs to be investigated and found out. Because if that's the case, that's frankly, then you start talking impeachment. So these things are true. These things are true. So he needs to release his taxes, and there needs to be an independent investigation into whether there were communications between President Trump, or excuse me, at the time, candidate Trump's campaign and Russia, Russian officials. Because if, which I'm still stating, there is not definitive concrete proof that the Russian government orchestrated the leaks of the DNC or Hillary Clinton's campaign. The trolls come after me. They call me an agent of the Kremlin. I don't give a shit. I still haven't seen concrete evidence of anything. But the media breathlessly states it as if it's fact. Oh, the Russians hacked us. So let the media keep doing that. But Trump needs to release his taxes, and the second thing that needs to happen is an independent investigation into whether Trump's campaign officials coordinated in any way with Russian government officials to disseminate stolen emails or anything like that. Does that mean by doing that, that is why Trump got elected? Of course not. That's a red herring. It's bullshit. Trump got elected because he conned a large swath of America into thinking he was a populist, which he's now proven he isn't. He got elected because the Democrats ran the worst candidate they could run, probably in the history of elections. That's why he got elected. He didn't get elected because of WikiLeaks or Russian interference. We've gone over this over and over and over again. So if I have established the facts and I've established what I believe needs to happen. Number one, there needs to be a pressure campaign to get Trump to release his taxes. We do need to know what are his connections in business and otherwise to Russia. That's not a controversial statement. The second thing is there needs to be an independent investigation into whether Trump campaign officials were communicating with Russian government officials, not like people in Russia in their basement, Russian government officials or intermediaries, and coordinating in any way to disseminate emails. Again, that's not a controversial statement. I think everybody could agree on this. But that's where it ends. This is where it ends. And the hysteria that is going on in the media from these spineless, soulless, manipulative politicians drumming up the next Cold War is mind-boggling. And it's infuriating. And I'll tell you why it's infuriating, okay? It's one thing to be a very well-paid journalist or anchor or columnist who sits in a studio with makeup, who sits in the New York Times ivory tower and writes their bullshit columns. It's another thing to literally go around the country, and it's not just me, there's plenty of people who go around the country and cover real scandals, real misery, real injustice, real illegal behavior. I've covered Standing Rock 7 times. I've gone back and forth 7 times. There is literally a pipeline going under the longest river in the United States of America. Right now, as we speak, there's a pipeline going under the longest river in the United States that serves 18 to 20 million people. That pipeline is literally an investment of our president. The media has been reporting that he sold his shares. There's no proof he ever sold his shares in this pipeline, but they keep reporting it. This pipeline, the Energy Secretary, Rick Perry, was on the board of directors of the parent company of this pipeline. This pipeline company has publicly offered the public police to pay their overtime. That's corruption, folks. This pipeline company literally the other day out loud said, we are hurrying to finish this pipeline to make up for lost time, which I just posted my video on YouTube about that, which is in translation, this pipeline's going to burst because we are working as fast and irresponsibly as humanly possible to get this pipeline flowing so we could make our investors happy. There are unarmed, peaceful water protectors, week after week after week after week after week, getting charged with felonies for standing around teepees and praying, or trying to get a DAPL infiltrator to put down his AR-15, or ramming into the same DAPL infiltrator on the road, ramming your car into that DAPL infiltrator as that DAPL infiltrator was about to run over a pedestrian. This is a scandal that deserves hysteria. This is a scandal that deserves 24/7 news coverage, whether you agree with the pipeline or you don't. This is a scandal that affects life and death, because water, if you drink oil, you die. That's not me fear-mongering, that's truth. And by the way, I gotta be honest, folks, and this isn't the wisest thing for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's not just the corporate media. There's some folks on this very channel doing videos on Russia And I have nothing against them personally, but there's these blinders on to what is actually a scandal anymore. Is it important to find out what Donald Trump's ties are to Russia? Absolutely. And I spent the first 5 minutes of this video saying as much. Is it important to find out if Donald Trump's campaign coordinated in any way with the Russian government? 100%. That is scandalous. That is absolutely scandalous if that's true. You don't have to be a progressive, conservative. It doesn't matter. That's just common sense. That would be scandalous. Imagine if we found out Hillary Clinton's campaign was coordinating with Saudi Arabia or anybody, we'd be calling for impeachment on day one. So don't be hypocrites if you don't agree with that. So one thing could be worthy of coverage, but it does not merit 24/7 hysteria. Hysteria. To the complete ignoring of real scandals. So we know about Standing Rock. Let me tell you about another scandal, folks. I'm in East Chicago, Indiana right now. I have an investigator who has tested homes in Flint joining me today. We're going to test more homes because the EPA is not doing it. Let me tell you about the scandal here. East Chicago, Indiana, not Chicago, it's Indiana. The city is called East Chicago, is a predominantly Latina and African-American community. There are also low-income white people who live here as well, but predominantly Latina and African-American. Indiana, all states, a lot of them have industrial plants, like lead plants or insecticide plants or paint factories or whatever it is. And where do they tend to dump those plants? Where poor people live, where minorities live. Well, this city, East Chicago, Indiana, was literally built next to a lead smelting plant with lead emitters. And for 40 years, they were moving black people, Latina people, low-income white people, right next to lead, right on top of lead. The EPA knew that this community was at high risk for lead exposure, and they did testing only in certain areas. They didn't do comprehensive, full testing until last year. And what did they find when they did full testing? One complex, a poor, low-income black complex, West Calumet complex, in the ground soil, they found 218 times the allowable limit for lead, which the allowable limit is a bullshit phrase anyway. The allowable limit for lead is 0. That's how much lead I want in my kids' ground soil or my kids' water. And I don't even have any kids. So this was found. And in August of last year, I interviewed an EPA official. And you know what he told me? August 2016. This is not Flint. This is not a water issue. What came out 3 months later? Shocker. Lead in the water. Well, let me tell you about, besides that, the whole thing being scandalous, that they're basically dumping black and Latinas on top of lead for 40 years, and the EPA knew about it and didn't do a damn thing. So the current vice president, Mike Pence, was governor of Indiana when this came out. Okay. Mike Pence never came down here to East Chicago. He sent his lieutenant governor, who is now the current governor. Mike Pence, there was a similar lead situation in Greentown, Indiana. Different circumstances, but they found lead. White community, 90% white. Mike Pence went down there. That's a fucking scandal. Here's another scandal. Mike Pence never came down here to East Chicago, but he did leave the campaign trail when he was running for vice president to go visit a white neighborhood that got struck by a tornado. I'm not against him visiting a white neighborhood that was struck by a tornado, but I just told you, he visited a white neighborhood that had a lead problem. He visited a white neighborhood struck by a tornado. He couldn't be bothered to come visit a black and Latino neighborhood struck by toxic levels of lead. And by the way, it's not just lead, folks. Today, we're going to be testing for lead, bacteria, all this other toxins that the EPA doesn't test for. Mike Pence, after he was elected vice president, so the transition period, vice president-elect, he declined, he denied East Chicago's request to declare a disaster emergency. Because when you declare a disaster emergency, more funding comes to that community in need. He denied it. A credit to the new governor, Eric Holcomb. He's been in office less than 2 months. He just issued a state of disaster. A disaster emergency. You want to know why? Because Eric Holcomb, who was the lieutenant governor for Mike Pence, he came down here. He saw the people's cry. He saw what was going on here. Maybe he did it for political reasons. Maybe he did it for the right reasons. Who the hell knows? But he has issued an emergency declaration here. So the current vice president, who, as we're seeing now, it's not clear that Trump is going to make it 4 years. He might be impeached, so the vice president might become president. This man chose to go visit a white town that had a lead problem, went to go visit a white town that was struck by a tornado, but couldn't be bothered to visit those black people, those poor black and Latino people. That's not my opinion. That's what happened. Have you heard anything about that on CNN? Have you read about that in the New York Times? Huh? Have you heard Rachel Maddow talking about this? I haven't. Credit to the Huffington Post, who wrote a story about this 2 days ago, I think. There are some media doing its job. That is a scandal, folks. That's a scandal. That deserves 24/7 coverage, not whether Michael Flynn had a call with Russia. Let me tell you another scandal, folks. And I know I can't get to every scandal because I'm not in every community. 2 weeks ago, I took a detour from North Dakota and I went down to South Dakota. First time in South Dakota. So in November, there was an anti-corruption ballot measure voted on by the voters. Among other things, it limited the amount politicians could take from lobbyists. It put in place more campaign finance rules. Very good things, in my opinion. And you know what happened? It passed 52-48. The voters voted for more anti-corruption measures. You know what South Dakota's Republican legislature did? They just repealed it. They repealed democracy. They literally repealed what the voters voted on because they need their lobbyist money and they don't want any caps on how much money they could accept from lobbyists. I want to repeat that. South Dakota's legislature literally repealed what the voters just passed. You hearing me right? Have you heard anything about that on CNN? Did you read about it in the New York Times, MSNBC, Washington Post, Rachel Maddow, Anderson Cooper? No, I'm asking you because I'm on the road most of the time, so maybe I missed it. You know what another scandal is, folks? Flint, Michigan. There's headlines going around the country the last few weeks. Oh, the lead levels in Flint, Michigan finally are under the allowable limit. Well, if you believe that shit, I got a bridge to sell you. Because as I've reported, and you could go to youtube.com/TYTpolitics and look at more, the EPA is not testing the whole home. And they're certainly not testing every home in Flint. They only test the sink water on cold, which gives you the lowest possible reading for lead. If you test it on hot, you get the true reading of how much lead is in your water. They're also not testing the shower waters. They're also not testing the home water heaters. They're also telling citizens you could shower, you could bathe. Their reason? Well, there are no official standards or numbers. There's no standard number for what's the allowable limit in the shower. So what can we tell you? That's what they say. And they say, yeah, just, drink with a water filter and you'll be fine. Well, I have been to Flint 3 times, and I recently interviewed people who are still having nosebleeds, who are still having rash, who have liver problems, and who, when they go in the shower, literally can't breathe. Literally can't breathe. Meanwhile, there's headlines going around, oh, Flint is under the normal lead level, all is well in the world. I'm not saying that if you work in a studio and you never leave the studio and go across the country, that means you're out of touch. That's not necessarily true. I'm not saying that I am God's gift to the world because I travel the country and cover things up close. That is not necessarily true either. It's a privilege to go around and do this. It's extremely hard. It's hard on your body. It's hard on your spirits. There's a lot of misery that I see. It's depressing. There's a lot of things you cover that there's nothing you could do but spotlight it. But what I am saying is the corporate media military industrial complex, again, the corporate media military industrial complex is at a fever pitch, folks. And it is trying to distract viewers and the country from what really is going on. And you want to know why CNN and the New York Times and all of these people don't cover the scandals that I just told you about? You want to know why? This isn't my opinion. I worked in cable news. I worked at Fox News and I worked at MSNBC years ago. I've had many conversations with people who work at these places, and I was there. So I know why they do what they do. Because the things I just told you on, they can't make any money off of those stories, or so they think they can. Sending satellite trucks to Standing Rock or East Chicago, sending reporters and producers and editors and camera people for long periods of time to North Dakota or East Chicago or Flint or South Dakota, whatever. Costs money. The Young Turks manages to do it, thanks to our viewers who have been helping fund our reporting. But they can't seem to do it. Organizations with a lot more money than the Young Turks. Why? Because they don't think it will give them ratings. They don't think their corporate parents will like it because it's much cheaper to put Democrat A in that box, Republican B in that box, and have a food fight for 4 minutes and just repeat that over and over and over again all day. Much cheaper product to do it that way. And to have pundits and experts on all day to hyperventilate over Russia. Next week it will be something else. And to speculate and fearmonger and propagandize, that's a much cheaper product than actually sending reporters out in the field, sending satellite trucks. I want to read you something from Salon to hammer home the point. So Dennis Kucinich used to be a U.S. congressman, pretty much was Bernie a long time ago. He ran in 2008, totally against the military-industrial complex and all this. Okay, well, Kucinich has been basically saying what I'm saying about this Russian fear-mongering. But he goes further. This Salon article, Kucinich makes sense. The military-industrial complex benefits from actual or potential conflict with Russia. Hyping the Russia threat is a moneymaker for defense contractors. The specter of war with Russia is used by defense officials in both the U.S. and the UK as a means of arguing for more money to be thrown at the military. Never mind that the 2015 Pentagon budget, for example, was more than 9 times higher than Russia's defense budget in 2015. And that Putin, while he does control an increasingly strong nuclear power, does not have a death wish for his country. Kucinich also reminded us of an all but forgotten incident in Syria a couple months ago that conceivably is related to the current mess. During the last months of the Obama presidency, the White House struck a deal with Russia for an attempted ceasefire in Syria. Lo and behold, a few days later, a mistaken American strike killed 62 Syrian soldiers and put a prompt end to the deal. The former Ohio congressman summed it up this way, quote, "What happened is, inside the intelligence and the Pentagon, there was a deliberate effort to sabotage an agreement the White House made. This is like deep state. This is like some kind of spy novel. But it's real, and the American people have to understand a game is being played with the security of our country." If you came to this late, I want to restate a few things before I end. And I really hope you'll share this video. I'm sorry if I was flying off the handle, but I'm very frustrated and I'm very passionate about what's going on. Two different things are true at the same time. Let me go through what is true. The first thing that's true. Trump needs to be forced to release his taxes because we do need to know what his connection to Russia is. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I really don't. We need to know how much business he has done with Russia, if there's still current business going on that we don't know about, how much money he has made off of Russia, and how much money his company still makes off of Russia. Because obviously, if he's still actively making money doing deals with Russia, then, well, he's the president, so he might set foreign policy with Russia based on that. And that is not only a conflict of interest, but it's against the law to do that. Even though Trump thinks laws don't apply to him. He's like Nixon. It's not illegal if the president does it. So he does need to release his taxes. The second thing that is also true is there needs to be an independent investigation on whether any Trump campaign officials had contacts with Russian government officials and in any way coordinated on releasing emails or anything else during the campaign. I don't think that's a controversial statement. So that is the first set of facts that is true. And if you disagree with me, then I think you're just being partisan. The second thing that is true is that is where it ends, folks. Michael Flynn had a conversation that he shouldn't have had with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., and he was fired for it. Would Trump have fired him if the media didn't go hysterical? Probably not. But does the media need to go hysterical for the next week? 2 weeks? Over this? I don't think so. I think what the media should be hysterical about is all the stories and scandals I've told you about for the last 15 minutes. When you are out in the country and you speak with these people, you see how people are being just fucked up the ass. Excuse my French. You see the total lack of accountability and justice on the perpetrators of these, I'm going to call them human rights abuses towards black people, towards Latinos, towards white people, towards Native Americans. There's no accountability. That is scandal, folks. So, can there be a scandal that we don't know about between Trump and Russia? 100% there can, and there needs to be investigation about it. But last time I checked, most of these cable news outlets and all of these digital and print newspapers operate 24/7. Do they not have enough time to cover all of it? Do they not have a big enough budget to cover all of it? They damn well do have the ability to cover all of it. They choose not to. And that is the real scandal. You know, I work for the Young Turks, so I'm happy to work for the Young Turks. I don't always agree with the Young Turks. And the beauty of the Young Turks is I could say when I don't agree, and there's no retribution. There's no, jank calling me to say, hey, shut up. I've been open. I think the Young Turks covers Trump too much. I do. But it's their show and they can do whatever they want. I'm going to continue to do what I do out in the field. I don't agree with Cenk on the Russia stuff. I don't. Doesn't mean we're not in 99% agreement about everything else. But I don't think this should be covered at the hysteria fever pitch that it is. These other stories that are not as sexy and are not as hyperbolic and don't invoke, the hysteria that Russia does, they deserve the coverage. Because you want to know something? It's scandalous when the Vice President of the United States chose not to do a damn thing for white and black people, but was shown to have done things in the same situation for white people. That's scandalous. It's scandalous when a pipeline, a toxic crude oil pipeline, is being rammed under the longest river in the United States of America, and the current president of the United States is going to make money off of it. That's scandalous. That is scandalous.